So Omar Sultan, Director of Product Management for Automation at Cisco. You might know me or my team builds NSO, but also we just recently launched a workflow product, which is what I'm here to talk about today. So I'll go over some slides about what we think is interesting about it. I have a canned demo that I will walk you through, and then I think we'll have access to the slides and video afterwards for your own purposes. So this is what we called internally was Project Strom, which is half our team's from Stockholm. So um, this is Swedish for stream. And you know the instead of calling it a workflow, flow of works is what Victor Leon, one of our CTO architects, called this because this was part of his vision. Is like, you know, what we really want to do is when you automate a task, there are a bunch of individual things that are automated. We really want to find a good way of tying things together. So let's see. I'm going to talk about why workflow, talk about some of the key features, then we'll run through about a demo that runs about 6 minutes long. So I'm not going to explain workflow. I think everyone understands the concept. I want to spend a little bit more on why we are spend time on building a workflow product. I think thing number one is, and we touched on this in the interview the other day, why don't people automate more? If you talk to pretty much everyone at this point, they say, hey, automation's great, it's wonderful, we should do more of it. But then you look at what actually gets done, and uptake or actually deployment is very, low relative to aspiration. So I spend a lot of my time figuring out, well, what will help people automate more. And part of it is some sort of workflow on top of it. If you look at the tools that we have for automation, whether it's NSO or Ansible or Python scripts or other stuff, they're very capable, but there's a technical threshold you have to understand to be able to use the tools or modify them or to implement them. And really see, things like workflow, or, even within our portfolio, things like CNC, things like the HCO presentation, taking things and kind of building easy buttons and kind of taking functionality that's common and making it easier to adopt or easier to use. So that's thing number one, is to provide a tool to take common automation tasks and make them push button easy for people that are not necessarily technical. So like tier one, tier two tech support, where I should be able to flip a port, to be able to cycle a port on a router or something without having to get a higher level people involved, or you should be able to provision a VPN without having to get, manual intervention. The other piece of this is, I always tell customers, automation is a team sport. There's not one super tool that will do everything for everybody. So within automation, you're always going to have two or three tools that address various parts of what you need to get done, and you still need to get them to play well together. Even within our portfolio between NSO and CNC and HCO, there are workflows where we need to do a little bit in each of those things and find a way to tie them all together in a way that's simple to operate and repeatable and easy to use. The other piece of that is it's not just the tools, right? If you look at, I want to do a software update, or I want to update my routers, or I want to provision a VPN, there's a bunch of other systems that need to get involved, whether it's trouble ticketing or IPAM or logging or audit or those kinds of things. And workflow ultimately needs, for a workflow to truly replace a business process or an IT process, it needs to be able to interface with all those things and tie them together. And so that's kind of the second thing that we're driving for with, why we spend time on workflow. Our design goals, it needs to be bulletproof. It needs to never drop jobs. It needs to be able to scale. It needs to be able to handle exceptions with a high degree of sophistication. We want it to be user extensible. For those of you familiar with NSO, part of our success with NSO is this concept of NEDs, where we have modular adapters for different types of systems and operating systems and those kinds of things. Some 170 devices and platforms and OSs we support. So we want to take that same concept and reuse it, but make it better. And finally, we want it to be programmatic. We wanted to take an approach that really looked at workflow as code, as opposed to kind of the pointy clicky type of thing. And we'll get to the pointy clicky type of thing. I'll talk about roadmap a little bit. But our initial starting point is actually, let's try and make workflow something that's programmatically controlled with APIs and those kinds of things. One of the reasons for this, we're coming at this from a unique position in that, NSO, which is our starting base, is used in 19 of the top 20 service providers globally, a lot of large service enterprises, public sector. So our starting point is actually customers of large complex networks. And for them to be able to manage workflow and those kinds of things, the programmatic interface is actually easier for them to operationally work with than something visual. A couple of customers when we were talking about this said, hey, you know what, the point and click is nice for getting started or doing some basic workflows, but things that I want to do have like 400 nodes on a screen, and that just becomes cumbersome to navigate around, to edit, to make changes, and those kinds of things. Our workflow architecture, it's built around an open source workflow engine called Temporal. Um, and this basically is a structure. So, Temporal runs as a cluster manager. It identifies workflows that need to be executed. We have individual Kubernetes worker processes that then take individual tasks and go execute them. Again, one of the reasons we pick Temporal is it is ultra reliable. Things don't get dropped. So we can make sure if a workflow kicks off, it runs reliably. It has a nice built-in mechanisms for handling failures. It can pause and resume processes. It is, able to control it externally. We also wanted flexibility, so we will use another open source CNCF project called Serverless to actually build the adapters. So we can, build the workflows. So we can code them in JSON or YAML, and they're really designed to be extensible and customizable, not just by us or CX, but by customers. Highly scalable. The initial 1.0 product ships running on a single node. From that, we'll go to HA pairs, and we'll go to a auto-scaling cluster. And then put a lot of time and effort into visibility and into APIs, again, for programmatic control of this thing. So serverless, horrible name. It always confuses everyone. The first thing I have to say is, no, it's not the Amazon thing. It's its own project. As I said, it allows you to code workflows in JSON or YAML. It's a good domain-specific language or DSL for writing workflows, and that it has a lot of the semantics and a lot of the native functionality to do the things you want to do. Coordinating task execution, sequencing, redundancy, gives us that sophisticated error handling, lots of optionality, and those kinds of things. The adapters themselves are, again, I've heard, you hear me say flexible and user extensible. We build the adapters using Go. It's fast, it's flexible. One of the nice things with this is it allows adapters to be tested standalone. So you don't have to have a full deployment to be able to build and test an adapter. You can just, develop, sit on your laptop and build an adapter. And in the demo you'll see later, one of our TMEs built an adapter for WebEx team, just kind of playing around overnight. For interfaces, we use protobuf to build a model for the interfaces. One of the nice things about this then is, protobuf then generates the code for, the interface that becomes part of the adapter. So Crosswork Workflow Manager 1.0 ships with an NSO adapter and then a generic REST adapter. So NSO for us, for the product, and then REST is a place for, you can use anything else that supports REST APIs. It also ships with an SDK, so that's really the mechanism if you want to build your own adapters for whatever you want. We include that capability and all the developer support and those kind of things on day one. For the platform as a whole, we use Swagger APIs for all operations, so it's fairly self-documenting from that perspective. As I said, the 1.0 version is kind of headless. We kind of focused on the underpinnings, right? So reliability, an architecture and a structure that is stable and not brittle, and will be there for the long term. And then all these hooks and things for integration, making sure whether the telemetry or the adapters or the interface of those kinds of things are designed to be really user-driven. Observability we thought was important because that's part of the why people automate or not automate more. We think part of that is building trust in the system. So we spend a lot of time putting the hooks in for observability, whether it's leveraging these projects for logging in, log aggregation, and time series databases and those kinds of things, but also putting the hooks in if you want to get more sophisticated with Grafana or Prometheus or those kinds of things, making that relatively easy and straightforward to do. As you'll see in the demo, we put some time into the UI so you can see what's going on, see where things are, to help build trust in the system and start helping you feel like it's reliable. Operations UI, so we have a workflow dashboard so you can see you can see the workflows that are running You can double click on those and look at the job detail, even double click on that and look at the underlying YAML or JSON code, and you'll see that in the demo. There's a workflow library, so you can have a list of all the workflows that you've built already and search through that and find them. And then we have a UI to manage workers and those kinds of things. You'll see the first three in the demo video. So roadmap. This is shipping now-ish. It's just going through kind of the final supply chain stuff for getting software published at Cisco. So it's essentially, it's FCS. It should be, hopefully this week it'll actually be posted. So what we have is a core workflow engine. We're running us on single node Kubernetes, the ops GUI from the prior slide, the library functionality, the NSO and REST adapters, as long as the SDK, and we'll bundle some use cases with it. The next thing will be more adapters. So adapters are at least for our internal tooling like CNC and HCO and some other things. A job scheduler, a more structured service catalog, the ability to tag and filter on jobs, an input template, TMF 641 API, and HE enhancements. So we'll go from single node to dual node. And then finally, later we'll have, we will introduce the pointy clicky design, the GUI design studio for building workflows in a more visual manner. Even more adapters, to change, built-in change management for the workflows themselves, as well as auto scaling and multi-node deployments. So the span for this is around 12 to 18 months. From shipping now to these things over the next year and a half, will start to ship. Along with this, we envision this to give customers autonomy. They're trying to build this so it's a thing that you can download, use, and customize and build to your heart's content. That being said, we know for some customers they do want the easy button. So there's a full set of CX professional services that go with this. If you want CX to go build adapters for you, build and maintain workflows for you, they are ready to do that, as well as they have some of their own use cases that they are building and will have available. So we are going to basically instantiate a virtual router on AWS. We're then going to register it on CNC and NSO, and you'll see all the updates in WebEx Team Room to kind of show the status of this as it chugs along. So all the green things were enabled with the demo adapters. So this is what the workflow looks like. There's actually an open source tool, I think. So Dimitri, that was one of our TME, who will take the YAML or JSON and kind of build this visual view out of it. But essentially, this is what the workflow looks like if you turn the code and turn it into something more graphic. So basically, we're going to log in. We're going to have the nothing up my sleeve part of this. Will show that nothing's in Amazon, nothing's in CNC, nothing's in NSO. Then we'll kick the workflow off. So here's the WebEx Team Room over here. This will be all the different tools. So look in AWS, see nothing's running. We'll go into CNC and see what's there. Open up the map, I think. Show the topology. Then you'll go into Device Manager and see we just have 7 devices up and running. Okay, so we're going to kick off the workflow. So Our original intent, you drive workflows with parameter files. You drive them through pushing, pushing API calls to the workflow with information. So hence the super sexy cutting and pasting of parameters into a big text box. For a lot of folks, they're actually happy with this. As I said, for some folks, they don't want the pointy clicky. The next release will have a kind of a simple forms handler. So if you do have fixed parameters for your workflow, it'll give you a simple tool to throw up a box saying, okay, I need an IP address, I need a mask, port name, or whatever you need.
Put that in as standard JSON.
And it will show up later. Okay, so you'll start to see WebEx notifications starting to provision over here with status. Every time something gets updated. We've got a new device at the very bottom with a host name that matches, or your device ID that matches something, which matches the ID created over here in the EC2 instance. And then finally, we go from 7 to 8 devices. And then again, from within NSO, we'll connect to it, then we'll do a check sync. You can double click on the job here. And so then these are all the component tasks. And you'll see, you'll click on one of these and it'll expand. You can see the underlying JSON or YAML code. You'll also see, well, you can't, if you go back and study this after, you'll see the parameters and stuff that were in the original text box then got propagated and inserted into the code. Okay, we're still waiting for NSO to, CNC is done. We're waiting for NSO to complete. So we're up and running. There's our new device at the bottom. We're going to connect to it. We're connected. We're going to check sync to make sure it's running the right config based on the template. And that is basically it. I mean, you can keep rerunning that and it'll keep, instantiating more instances, or you could be feeding it to, feeding it from something else that changes the parameters up from instance to instance. So that is basically it. Thoughts, questions, feedback?
API calls in here.
Yes. Yes.
Full functionality.
All functions are, as I said, we got everything's documented in Swagger, so everything is self-documented. You don't have to wait. There's no lag time for getting API support or documentation.